Hello everyone. Today's video we're going to be taking a look at ski operations. Now this is kind of neat because I finally had an excuse to go all the way down here to New Zealand. Not New Zealand. This is actually Antarctica. This is NZPG and it's on McMurdo Sound. It's one of the neat little bases. We're sitting here on a giant ball of ice and we're sitting here in this little great little plane for this particular purposes. That is these nice retractable skis just to make things kind of fun for us. Now ski ops are pretty much the same as you could probably imagine they are for regular operations. There's just a couple little weird things you have to deal with. In the real world, of course, ski operations are terrifying because you have to deal with a surface that is not nearly as hard as it is in flight sim. The other thing you're going to have to deal with in the real world is things like having difficulty seeing the ground, consequences to coming too hard on a ski, all these sort of problems that we just don't have to deal with. We just have to worry about a couple little details. So right now, if you take a look, the first things first, we have to make sure skis are enabled. In this particular aircraft, the skis don't come enabled. You have to actually put your landing gear lever down, which will actually cause these things to go ahead and descend and lift you up a little bit. If you try to land on snow with wheels, you might find yourself sinking. The handle, by the way, is located right here. You want to make sure you leave those down if you intend ski operations. It's one of those things where I like to click it and just shut it off forever so you don't ever have to worry about it again. Takeoff in this is going to be super simple. We're going to treat this as a soft field takeoff. I mean, this is the ultimate soft field, really. So we're going to go ahead and pop down our notch of flaps, make sure it's the correct angle. We can actually go ahead and do two if we had to, but for this one, I'm just going to do the one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply smooth power. And remember, when you're on snow, there is very, very, very little braking action. No, there's none when you're on skis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the nose come down just a little bit, and we're going to hold just a steady tail down configuration as the plane comes airborne. And just like that, it wants to skid just a little bit. Watch out for that ground effect. It still applies in snow. And now we are airborne. Pop up that notch of flaps, a little low, but that's fine. Now, it is super tempting to go ahead and lift up those. I mean, we go boop, boop, and lift them up like that, but you don't want to do that because you're going to forget to put them back down. It's a little bit different when you're operating in snow, like I said. So now in the real world, when you do go ahead and do your snow takeoffs and your snow landings, you want to make sure that everything is good as far as the ground goes. You want to check the snow. You want to check the forecast. You can actually drive over the snow you intend to take off, then turn the plane around, and then drive back through the snow again to make sure that you're basically leaving yourself a trail. We don't have to worry about any of that in flight sim. The only thing we have to worry about is going to be our landing. Speaking of landing when you're on skis is basically the same thing as landing when you're on grass. I call it a soft field landing. Because remember, the surface is very, very soft. But you have a new problem, and that's the fact that unlike water that we just kind of crash into, snow you can't see. So when you're getting very, 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 very close to the ground, you always run into a problem where it's very difficult to identify how high off the ground you are. So normally when you're doing these ski landings, you're going to be somewhere in the back country or something like that, kind of the woods, and you have trees you can look at to identify how high off the ground you are. For this, you're going to have to be extraordinarily careful to make sure that you put yourself down in such a way that's going to be safe. The nice thing is I'm looking out the window now, and I can see it looks like a patch of grass. There ain't no grass here. This is entirely ice. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set ourselves up for landing. We'll pop that first notch in. We'll go ahead and enter into our left base, and we'll start making our way down to the ground. Now, you want to be really, really, really careful during this, because in the real world, like I said, you have the ability to kind of see the ground. You can see things around you. Where we are way, way out here in Antarctica, you don't have much of an ability to see much of anything. Haha, redundant. We're going to come spin around here. It looks good. Pop down that next notch of flaps. Our speed's looking pretty good. And we're going to pop down that last notch of flaps too as we make our left turn and start setting ourselves up on the final approach here. Now, as you can see, there is no way to identify where the ground is. So what I like to do is kind of pick a point on the ground, and a lot of times in snow runways, they'll have little markers to make it a little bit easier. I see that point right off my nose. I'm looking at that spot right there. I'm just going to kind of fly towards it. I'm not going to fly at it, otherwise we'll go smoosh. All right, we're going to go ahead and pull the nose up just a little bit here. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to get the plane close. Whoop! Skipping off the snow just a tiny bit here. We're going to get the plane close to the ground, and we're going to apply just a few RPM, and we're going to hold it at a tail-down attitude. What's going to happen is as the plane starts to slow down, you want it to sink just ever so slightly carefully. Again, you want just a little bit of power. Just a little bit of power. There's the warning. And we're just going to smoothly pull the power up. And we're going to hold back just a teeny tiny bit as the plane sinks down into the snow directly. Now, you have a little tiny bit of directional control, but you have to be pretty darn quick because, remember, you don't have brakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull gently on this. You don't want to pull it all the way back. In the real world, you'd sink your tail into the ground, which is not what you want to do. Now, one of the fun tricks here is you'll notice I have braking action because our wheels are partially sticking into the snow, which gives us the ability. Short version, make sure when you land you have something to reference, and make sure when you do hit the ground you got a little bit of RPM in to soften that landing just a little bit. And of course, if this was the real world and I kicked the rudder like this, the thing would never steer that smoothly. Go, and all of a sudden you'd find yourself in a funky angle, basically needing a shovel. Enjoy.